Have you ever felt that the deeper your thoughts go, the further away you drift from others? That the more clearly you see the world, the harder it becomes to relate to those around you? You're not imagining things. In fact, this is a silent reality for many deep thinkers. Throughout history, those who questioned, who challenged, who pondered beyond the surface were often not celebrated, but shunned. Not because they were wrong, but because they saw too much, too clearly, too honestly. From the stoic detachment of Marcus Aurelius to the quiet torment of Kierkegaard, thinkers have often found themselves alone, not in intellect, but in spirit. But why does this happen? Why is it that those who pursue truth so often end up isolated? The answer lies in a quiet discomfort that society rarely acknowledges, a psychological tension between comfort and clarity. When you meet someone physically stronger than you, you might admire their strength. When someone is wealthier, you may feel envious, but rarely threatened. But when you're in the presence of someone who thinks more deeply than you do, something shifts. You don't just see their strength, you feel exposed. Psychologists call this intellectual dissonance. Deep thinkers don't simply introduce new ideas, they reveal what others haven't questioned, and often what others don't want to. It's not arrogance, it's not superiority, it's a mirror. And mirrors are rarely kind. They don't just reflect who we are, they show who we pretend not to be. And when someone forces you to see your own blind spots, especially without trying, it's easier to reject them than to reflect. Intelligence, unlike other forms of power, touches something sacred, our self-image. You can admire someone's beauty and still feel beautiful. You can respect someone's success and still feel worthy. But intelligence, that's different. We define ourselves by our thoughts, our values, our understanding. So when someone arrives who operates on a higher level, who questions what we've never dared to question, it doesn't feel like curiosity. It feels like judgment. It feels like threat. Not because they attack, but because they expose. This is why deep conversations often die early in casual circles. It's why nuance is unwelcome in small talk, and why those who seek meaning often find silence. In social environments, humans aren't wired for truth. We're wired for belonging. Evolution favored those who were accepted by the group, not those who challenged it. To question the tribe was to risk exile, and exile once meant death. So we learned unconsciously to avoid those who disrupt the harmony, even if their disruption brings clarity. Today, the stakes aren't survival, but the brain doesn't know that. When a deep thinker enters a room and introduces a new way of seeing the world, the primal brain still flinches, still feels danger, still wants to protect the group dynamic, even at the cost of truth. That's why intelligence, especially in public or group settings, can be so polarizing. One-on-one, the same insight might be welcomed. In a crowd, it's seen as a challenge to the social hierarchy. Research from Yale and Stanford confirms this. In group settings, the presence of a highly analytical thinker can trigger subconscious status anxiety. People begin to perform, compare, and compete, not because the thinker is arrogant, but because others feel exposed. It's not intellect itself they fear, it's the shift in status it causes. This is why, historically, many brilliant minds have walked the margins of society, not because they were unlikable, but because they couldn't, and wouldn't, dull their thoughts to fit in. Think about Friedrich Nietzsche. Brilliant, passionate, misunderstood. He didn't hate people, he just couldn't tolerate pretense. The same could be said of Simone Weil or David Foster Wallace or Hannah Arendt. These thinkers weren't lonely because they lacked connection. They were lonely because most of the world was speaking a different language, a language of distraction, of noise, and they were searching for silence, for meaning. But society doesn't reward depth, it rewards clarity, confidence, simplicity. In fact, studies in behavioral psychology reveal something astonishing. People prefer certainty to accuracy. That's why someone with a simple but wrong idea will often gain more followers than someone with a complex but truthful one. It's not malice, it's brain efficiency. The brain loves shortcuts. Certainty feels safe. And deep thinkers don't offer safety. They offer questions. Questions that disrupt. Questions that demand thought. And thought requires energy most people aren't willing to spend. This is why we see the rise of influencers over intellectuals. Why charisma beats contemplation. Because in the age of scrolling, complexity loses to convenience. Social media algorithms don't reward depth. They reward outrage, novelty, and dopamine. A philosopher who takes 5 minutes to unpack a truth is buried beneath a meme that takes 5 seconds to provoke a reaction. It's not a battle of ideas, it's a battle of attention. And in that war, the loudest wins, not the wisest. So what does this mean for those who think deeply? Should they hide their thoughts? Diminish their insights? Absolutely not. But they must understand the world they're speaking into. They must accept that truth is often lonely. That understanding doesn't always lead to applause, but it can lead to peace. Because while deep thinking may isolate, it also liberates. It removes the noise. It peels away illusion. It brings a strange, raw kind of clarity. And with that clarity comes power. Not the power to lead others necessarily, but the power to know oneself. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once said, "The more a man knows, the more he suffers." But he didn't mean suffering as punishment. He meant awareness is a kind of burden. To see clearly is to see everything, the beauty and the tragedy, the hope and the horror. And once you've seen, you can't unsee. But that's the price of truth. And it's worth it. Because in the end, what's more meaningful? To be surrounded but misunderstood? Or to walk alone but see clearly? So if you've ever felt the weight of your own thoughts, if you've ever looked around and wondered why surface-level conversations leave you empty, if you've ever been told you're too intense, too much, or think too deeply, you are not broken, you are not lost, you are simply awake in a world that prefers to sleep. And while that can feel lonely, it's also rare. And rare things, by their nature, do not belong in crowds. If this message resonates with you, take comfort in knowing you're not the only one walking this path. And remember, while solitude can feel like punishment, it is also where the clearest thoughts, the deepest truths, and the most beautiful ideas are born. Embrace your depth, even if others don't, because one day the world may catch up. But until then, keep thinking, keep questioning,